Hey guys, Sports Runs on Diesel back at you here. And today we're going to be talking about the Anthony Davis trade as he goes to the LA Lakers for, draft picks, all that jazz. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the NBA draft here as well, and winners and losers, and people who are buzz, people who have upside to them. But let's start off with the Anthony Davis trade. I think it's phenomenal that Anthony Davis is moving on from New Orleans, going to LA to help LeBron James and company. And now they're going to be a contender in the West, and they could even be a title contender. There's other teams out there in the West. There's Portland, there's Denver, there's Oklahoma City. Those guys stay together. There's all sorts of teams out in the West. You can never count out San Antonio. Golden State, even though Golden State's going to have 2 out of their 3 top players gone. Golden State, you can never count out Golden State. There's still Curry, there's still Draymond Green, and majority of that team is still together, even though they don't have Klay Thompson or Kevin Durant. But LA is going to be, in my opinion, I think they will be a top 3 seed in the West next season. They might get off to a slow start. I expect them to struggle early in the season. Like the last time LeBron James moved from Cleveland when he went to Miami in 2011, they started off 9-8 on the season, but they finished off 58-24. They eventually did lose in the finals to the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games, but they got off to that slow start, and that's what I expect out of this LA Lakers team with Anthony Davis going there. But this is good. This is also good for New Orleans. New Orleans gets a boatload of draft picks, gets 3 players, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and Brandon Ingram. And what this does is this opens up New Orleans to a fresh start and builds their whole entire franchise around Zion Williamson. And I think that's a beautiful thing for Zion and a beautiful thing for New Orleans, a fresh start, and they can start building the team around him. And it looks like they could have a pretty decent season. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but my prediction on them is close to 500 ball, depending on Brandon Ingram and how his blood clots are. And we'll see what Lonzo Ball brings to the table. A new team. He could thrive in New Orleans, especially with Zion Williamson, with his passing ability. So we'll see what happens there with New Orleans. But moving on to the NBA draft and who won. My first one was the Memphis Grizzlies. They got Ja Morant out of Murray State, John Concher out of Purdue, and Brandon Clark out of Gonzaga. I thought those 3 picks were fantastic, especially Ja Morant. One of the only players the only player in college basketball last season to average 25 points and 10 assists a game. So I really do think that Memphis, but Ja Morant's got big shoes to fill here. Now that they just lost Mike Conley, they just gave up Mike Conley. So I would love to see, like I said, Ja Morant's got huge shoes to fill here, and we'll see where this all goes down and how he's a potential candidate to be Rookie of the Year because he's going to get a lot of playing time in his first season, as well as Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett and some of these other players like DeAndre Hunter. There's going to be some guys on this team, some guys out of this draft that will have a lot of playing time and have potential Rookie of the Year campaigns in the 2020 season. The other team I have winning was the Denver Nuggets. Bull out of Oregon. I think this guy is very talented, even though he only played 9 games last year due to a fracture in his foot. But given Denver's deep roster and what they have as a team, Bol can take his time coming back from this injury, as Michael Porter Jr. did in the previous season with his 2 back surgeries and his back issues. Bol can take his time because with a deep roster, there's no rush for him to get back and possibly re-injure that foot or possibly cause something else to happen. So, but I think Denver made a great pick here. He slipped all the way down to the 44th pick, and Denver said, hey, we'll trade for him. And that's what Denver ended up doing, and I love Denver's pick here. Some risky moves that I thought maybe can be a bust. I thought Phoenix Suns picking Cameron Johnson, at the 11th overall pick. They traded from the 6th pick to the 11th pick. I mean, Cameron Jordan is probably, I mean, excuse me. Oh my goodness. Cameron Johnson is one of the best shooters in this year's draft, shooting over 40% from 3-point range on 30 attempts in his collegiate career. So I definitely do think that Cameron Jordan will be a good shooter in this league. But the thing is he's not physical. He's got to be better in his physicality in the game and stuff like that. But I think Phoenix kind of gave away a good pick here. They could have had Jarrett Culver, who was, I believe, projected to be the 4th overall pick, but then he got slipped down to the 6th overall pick. And Jarrett Culver is a great defensive player, good offensive player as well. But, I mean, Jarrett Culver struggled the last 25 games of the regular season because he just couldn't score the basketball. I mean, he got up to a hot start from the 3-point range and then just struggled the rest of the season, including the NCAA tournament, unfortunately with them losing in the finals to Virginia. But I mean, if you think about it, the Phoenix Suns did kind of make a good trade. They traded down, and then they got Dario Saric, who's a stretch 4 who can complement DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix. So like I always say, we will see what happens in this upcoming season. But I just think Cameron Johnson could be a bust pick for the Phoenix Suns because they could have had a great defensive player in Jarrett Culver. But I understand why they went for the scorer because they just got rid of T.J. Warren, who kind of had a breakout year last year in terms of scoring wise. They had to get rid of him because of cap space issues and stuff like that. So I understand why they did it. But we'll see where this goes. A risky move that I thought had a big upside to it. I've already mentioned him before, Bol for the Denver Nuggets. Like I said, he needs to improve on his motor and his physicality. There was a couple plays in his 9-game. There were some plays in his 9-game stint there with Oregon before he got hurt. Defensively, where he could have been better. He needs to have a better defensive motor. And, we're talking about a guy who's 7'2" and barely 210. And so eventually Bol will get, will build some muscle and will be better physically prepared for the physicality of the NBA in the 2020 season. But like I said earlier, there's no pressure for him to come back. There is absolutely no pressure for him to come back because Denver is so deep. Overall, and with Michael Porter Jr. coming back, I think that Bol can take his time coming back from this fracture in his foot here. Disappointments out of the NBA draft this year, in my personal opinion, I thought there was a lack of international flavor, in terms of non-collegiate players and non-G League players. There was not a lot of international flavor. There was only 6 players drafted in this year's draft. Whereas in 2018's draft, there was 11 players, and 2017, there were 10 players. So, but I mean, the 2020 draft, looking ahead, it looks like the 2020 draft is loaded with international talent. So I think one off year is not going to kill anybody, but I think if anyone, it's just the way it is. I mean, sometimes there's just a down year in terms of international talent and stuff. But look forward to next year's draft and seeing what international players are coming up. And I believe 2 of them are in next year's 2020, very, very early mock draft of 2020 in the top 5 in terms of talent. But, we'll see where this all goes down the road here as in terms of the upcoming season and where they play out in their respective European leagues and whatever leagues they are in overseas. Rookie of the year prediction. I'm loving this. I mean, obviously, there's a few players that I think have a chance. I personally think Zion Williamson is going to be the rookie of the year. He's going to have a multitude of minutes to play, game in and game out. The franchise is focusing on him as the focal point in New Orleans, so he's going to have a lot of minutes, a lot of playing time. He's the most NBA ready player. Some people argue that and say RJ Barrett is. I think RJ Barrett has a great game and everything. But in terms of overall physicality, I think Zion Williamson is going to be the rookie of the year in the 2020 season. Other candidates, I think Ja Morant, he's going to have plenty of minutes. Like I said, he's got big shoes to fill, filling in for Mike Conley now that Mike Conley's been traded. And then you got RJ Barrett, who's got some monster shoes to fill in New York at Madison Square Garden. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him, but I think he's a talent who is ready to take on the New York media and to take on the stage, and will have a very good rookie season in New York and could possibly be a Rookie of the Year candidate. My dark horse for Rookie of the Year candidate is DeAndre Hunter, who got drafted by Atlanta at number 4. I think he'll see a lot of playing time on a very young team. And Atlanta's got a little got some upside to him this upcoming season. Trae Young coming off a very, very good late second half of the 2019 season. Gave Luka Doncic a run for his money at the Rookie of the Year award, but Luka did end up winning it. But I like Atlanta, and they got a lot of upside coming up. Young talent, a lot of upside for the upcoming season in 2020. Also, this was breaking news as of this morning. I noticed that Ujiri, the president of basketball operations at the Toronto Raptors, is planning on staying in Toronto. There was big speculation the Washington Wizards were going to give him $10+ million a year to be the president of operations at the Wizards organization. But as far as I saw this morning, Ujiri is staying in Toronto, which is going to be big. I think he's part of the reason why, Toronto's got the title, made that big risk on Kawhi Leonard, big risk, bigger reward now that they all have a chip and now have a ring on their fingers. And, I like him staying in Toronto. I think it's going to be good for the league, and it's going to be good for Canada as well overall as a country now that they finally have their first NBA ring. But I want to thank you guys for your time. Comment, like, subscribe to me on YouTube. Sports Runs on Diesel. Have a great day.